By 49 BCE, the collision between Julius Caesar and the Roman Senate had become inevitable. Caesar had spent 8 years in Gaul building an army, a fortune, and a legend. His enemies in the Senate had spent the same 8 years building a legal case against him and working to strip him of everything he had gained. The question was not whether the conflict would happen. The question was who would move first. Caesar moved first. This is Caesar versus Pompey, the Civil War. To understand why the Civil War happened, you need to understand the legal trap that Caesar's enemies had constructed for him. Roman law was clear on one point. A governor with a military command had legal immunity from prosecution for actions taken during his command. The moment Caesar crossed back into Italy as a private citizen, that immunity vanished. His enemies in the Senate had prepared a long list of charges relating to his conduct in Gaul: illegal wars, unauthorized treaties, misappropriation of funds. If Caesar came home without his command, he faced prosecution, conviction, and political destruction. His only protection was to either retain his command or move directly from his command to a consulship, the highest office in Rome, which would give him new immunity. He had been negotiating for months to arrange exactly this, and his enemies in the Senate had been blocking every avenue. In January of 49 BCE, the Senate passed the Senatus Consultum Ultimum, the ultimate decree, effectively declaring a state of emergency and ordering Caesar to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. 2 tribunes who had vetoed the decree fled to Caesar's camp, their persons, which should have been inviolable under Roman law, threatened by the Senate's actions. Caesar called a meeting of his soldiers and explained the situation. He presented the flight of the tribunes as an attack on the Roman constitution itself. He framed crossing the Rubicon not as rebellion, but as defense of Roman law and his own dignity. The soldiers cheered. They crossed. What happened next shocked everyone who had expected Caesar to face serious military resistance. Pompey, Rome's greatest general, Caesar's former ally, and now his primary opponent, panicked. He had been telling the Senate that he could raise legions with a stamp of his foot. When Caesar moved south with terrifying speed, Pompey discovered that the legions were not materializing as promised. He abandoned Rome. He abandoned Italy. He sailed to Greece with the Senate in tow, promising to regroup and return with overwhelming force. Caesar walked into Rome without a battle. He then moved with characteristic speed to consolidate his position. He raided the Roman treasury. The tribunes who had fled to him provided the legal justification, and moved against Pompey's forces in Spain before Pompey could use them to threaten Italy from the west. The Spanish campaign took 40 days. Caesar surrounded Pompey's legions at Ilerda, cut off their water supply, forced their surrender, and then, in a move that defined his approach to the Civil War, released them. He did not execute the captured soldiers. He did not even take them prisoner. He discharged them and let them go. This was Caesar's clemency policy, clementia, and it was both genuinely humane and brilliantly calculated. Every soldier Caesar released was a potential future ally and a living advertisement that surrendering to Caesar was safe. Every soldier Pompey's side executed was a reason for their opponents to fight harder rather than give up. The clemency policy consistently confused and frustrated his enemies, who expected him to behave like a traditional Roman conqueror. With Spain secured, Caesar returned east to face Pompey directly. The decisive confrontation came at Pharsalus in Greece in August of 48 BCE. Pompey had assembled an enormous force. Ancient sources say 45,000 infantry and 7,000 cavalry against Caesar's roughly 22,000 infantry and 1,000 cavalry. He also had the financial resources of the Eastern Mediterranean, the support of the Senate, and the moral authority of the legitimate Roman government in exile. He had one critical weakness. His cavalry outnumbered Caesar's by 7 to 1. and his plan relied on using that cavalry to sweep around Caesar's flank, get behind his lines, and collapse his formation. Caesar anticipated this. He took a group of experienced infantry from his third line, positioned them at an angle behind his right flank, hidden from Pompey's view, and gave them specific instructions. When Pompey's cavalry charged and began to succeed, these men were not to throw their javelins as infantry normally did. They were to use them as spears and thrust upward at the faces of the cavalry. The reasoning was psychological as much as tactical. Pompey's cavalry were aristocratic volunteers who valued their appearance and had never faced this kind of combat. A javelin thrust at the face was not a normal battlefield experience. When it happened, the cavalry broke. Caesar's hidden infantry turned what should have been a devastating flanking attack into a rout. The cavalry fled. Caesar's veterans rolled up Pompey's exposed flank. The battle was over in hours. Pompey watched his army dissolve from a hilltop, then rode to the coast, boarded a ship, and fled east toward Egypt. He was carrying almost nothing. The man who had been Rome's greatest general, who had swept pirates from the Mediterranean and conquered the East, was a refugee. Caesar pursued. When his ships reached the Egyptian coast near Alexandria, a small boat came out to meet him. The men in it presented Caesar with a rolled-up cloth. Inside was Pompey's severed head. The Egyptians had killed Pompey as a gift to Caesar, a calculation that he would reward them for eliminating his rival. Caesar reportedly turned away and wept. Whether the tears were genuine grief for a man he had known for decades, or disgust at the manner of his death, or frustration at being denied the chance to demonstrate his famous clemency, ancient sources disagree. Perhaps all three. Caesar was a complicated man. He stayed in Egypt far longer than military necessity required, ostensibly to settle a dispute over the Egyptian throne between the young pharaoh Ptolemy XIV and his sister Cleopatra VII. In practice, he became deeply entangled with Cleopatra, supported her claim to the throne, and spent several months in Alexandria while his enemies regrouped across the Roman world. He was not idle. He fought the Alexandrian War, a messy urban conflict against Egyptian forces loyal to Ptolemy, and nearly died when his ship was set on fire and he had to swim to safety. He, woman. Ptolemy, drowned in the Nile. Cleopatra became Queen of Egypt. Caesar then conducted a lightning campaign against Pharsalus II of Pontus, who had taken advantage of the Roman Civil War to seize territory in Anatolia. The campaign was so swift and decisive that Caesar summarized it in the famous dispatch, Veni, Vidi, Vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. He returned to Rome in 46 BCE to face the remaining Pompeian forces in Africa and then Spain. At the Battle of Thapsus in Africa, he defeated a Pompeian army of 80,000. At the Battle of Munda in Spain in 45 BCE, the last battle of the Civil War, he defeated the sons of Pompey in what he later described as the first battle in which he had fought for his life rather than for victory. He returned to Rome as the undisputed master of the Roman world. The Civil War had lasted 4 years. It had killed hundreds of thousands of Romans and allies. It had stripped the Senate of its independent power and demonstrated beyond any doubt that the Republican system could not survive the ambitions that the Republic's own success had produced. Caesar had won, but winning had not solved the fundamental problem. Rome still needed to be governed. Caesar still needed to figure out what to do with the power he had seized. And his enemies had not disappeared. They had simply gone underground, waiting. Next time in the Caesar series, Egypt, Cleopatra, and the Eastern campaigns. The story behind Rome's most famous alliance and what Caesar was really doing in Alexandria while Rome waited. Until then, this has been Drawn from History. Thanks for watching.